John, there is a particular brand of excitement and enthusiasm that comes around CrowdSource the Truth on Friday evenings. I think it's because people are really excited to hear the latest news from the world of John Cullen. How are you tonight, John?
I am well. Thank you for that. I'm not sure it's quite that exciting, but I'll give it a go. I'll do the best I can for this evening. I'll see what we
You're
can
selling
muster.
it. I'll tell you that.
see what we can muster. So we'll see.
Yeah. People know that we've got our sponsor exclusive segment on Friday nights. That starts at 7:30 Eastern. People can join us for that on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen or patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. Always simulcast, of course, on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. People who've been watching for a while, John, will be aware that you really started broadcasting, podcasting, doing the shows here about Vegas, and then you transitioned to coronavirus. But everybody's been talking about Ukraine, and it seems like the virus, where did it go?
Indeed. In fact, there's been so many new twists in the news cycle, many of which we've been somewhat on the tip of the spear. I think it's safe to say that at this point. We'll talk about that a little bit and back that up. But the net of it is, I don't know, do you remember as a kid, did your parents ever take you to the circus?
Yeah. Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, right over here at Madison Square Garden. It smelled like feces.
Elephants. Yeah, it smells like elephants, right? So,
but I still
elephants and it smells like elephants and donkeys. It's like
and popcorn.
Heck of yeah, exactly, and popcorn. and I think
they don't do it anymore. I haven't seen the circus in a long time.
I think the company disbanded. Yeah, I think it disbanded and all that kind of thing. But one of the things that they did, Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, was they had a 3-ring circus. And so there was something going on in each one of the 3 rings. And between, the ladies standing on the horse riding around and juggling chainsaws, and then, in the other ring, there were the elephants running around, and then the guys taming the lions. You don't even know what to look at. And it's overwhelming. And to a certain extent, I kind of feel like the news cycle is thrashing about a bit like a 3-ring circus at the moment. In that
certainly filled with clowns.
Well, there's that, certainly. And I wasn't really talking about U.S. foreign policy, but I'm glad you brought it up. But no, the truth is, when you look at the stories behind the biolabs in Ukraine that weren't a story, right? That wasn't really a story. That was fake news. And then something happened. And then we had the whole story about the Hunter Biden laptop. We've got the story about the war in Ukraine. And the title of tonight's show is, well, where did the pandemic go? We got all this other, we got Hunter Biden's laptop. We got biolabs in Ukraine. We got a war in Ukraine, right? We got Vladimir Putin. We got the presidents over here, the president's over there. He's taking pictures with this one. And what happened to the pandemic? Where'd the pandemic go? Weren't we having a pandemic where it wasn't like 6 million people dying and something like that? Right? So
it's hurting the airline business, though. So they want to end it.
It's like a 3-ring circus, and you're watching the 3-ring circus, and next thing you know, you're like, where did the guy on the stilts go? Where'd he go? Where'd the guy on the stilts go? I was just watching the guy on the stilts. Next thing I know, he's not there anymore, right? And it's almost like the gorilla illusion. Remember the gorilla illusion? Don't give it away for people who aren't familiar with it. But the things you're not looking for are things you don't see. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So we can do something in a week or 3 with the gorilla illusion and talk about perceptions and all that. It's something that I featured in a couple of my early videos about Vegas. And the gorilla illusion talks about perceptions, and the things that you're not looking for are things you don't see. It's one of the reasons why people, when you often hear after a motorcycle accident, The driver of the car says, I didn't see the guy on the motorcycle. They weren't looking for a guy on a motorcycle. So that's why they often don't see them. So let's take a look at a couple slides before we have to go to our patron only hour. And again, I apologize to the audience. I wish we didn't have to divide our show up like this. It's a bit awkward, guys. Don't think this is something that comes naturally to Jason and I. We wish we could monetize on this base platform, but we can't. The stuff that we do, we don't do makeup and cupcake recipes, so they won't let
you
us
don't
monetize
identify as a fashion
as a cupcake
model.
I'm thinking as identifying as a cupcake, but only for like a couple days. I like
you strike me
cupcakes
more
a lot
as the kind of guy who would walk into a bakery and address the baker as, hey, listen, cupcake.
I might do that.
That's a little more your style.
Depends on which bakery we're talking about. Exactly.
Right.
Little Italy, that'll get you killed. All right. So let's take a look at these slides. So the first question is, all right, so where did the pandemic go? Or it's 6 million people dead. And is this thing like really over, or not quite over, or what's going on? Where's Fauci? I saw you had Fauci in red. What was Fauci doing in red on the thumbnail? Is that because he's playing golf on Sunday? Is this Sunday red?
You know what? This is just the color that he was photographed in that particular pic. Oh, the shirt, you mean? Because I couldn't find a picture of Fauci shrugging, so I just looked for a picture of an old guy shrugging, and this was it.
And popped him.
I did see a picture. It was interesting, John. Along the lines of our topic tonight, there was this picture of Fauci, like they were suggesting that Fauci might resign. So it's kind of like, well, while you're all distracted with World War III over there, I might just resign, pardon me, as I leave. Don't pay any attention to that. Oh, he's dismissed the rumors already.
Yeah. All right, long way to go. All right.
Way to go before this pandemic ends.
Why don't we take a look at some evidence? All right. So you guys know I like to focus on actual evidence and not so much. Although what you taught me last week on the show, you explained to me that if it's not testimony in court, if it's not sworn testimony, it's hearsay. So even though we're showing you stuff from the CDC and we're showing you stuff from authoritative sources, it's still hearsay because it's not being admitted to a court of law under oath. Is that correct?
Oath. Well, it's a complicated question, and I'm not a lawyer, so nothing I say is legal advice. But it is hearsay unless it's admitted as evidence by the court, and there's all these rules of evidence. But one thing that you need to know is that there are exceptions to the hearsay rule. Like if this is published in January, and then if you have a piece of evidence that says, hey, some building is going to collapse, and you have that in January, and then it collapses in February, that evidence becomes exempt from the hearsay because subsequent events prove that it was true.
Well,
likewise,
I've got quite a portfolio of that kind of crap, right? I've got so much hearsay that has come true. It's I'm going to.
There's a whole list of exceptions to the hearsay rule. For instance, if Fauci says, "Well, we didn't fund gain of function, but we did increase the deadliness of it and spread it around the shopping mall." Oh, wait a minute. Is this mic on? If he makes a statement against his own interest outside of court, that can be exempt from hearsay as well. So there's a couple different things that can make hearsay statements admissible.
All right. Well, all my stuff here for the purposes of censorship, everybody should consider this hearsay. Right. I'm simply clipping things that I'm finding, and I'm not an expert. I'm not an epidemiologist, not a doctor, but I know a little bit about data and charts. So let's go to the next slide. Let's show the audience what we've got. There's a lot of talk about a new variant, a new version of Omicron, and it is the darker red one in the lower right corner, and it's starting to become more and more prevalent compared to the former Omicron, which is the orange one.
Wait. How come it's not called, Optimus Prime or something? Why is it, this is Omicron 2? What is this?
So it's an iteration of Omicron, but they're still considering it Omicron. And if you zoom out and you look in the upper left-hand corner of the chart, go to the upper, So that's the clade tree. So that's the family tree of the virus. And the darker red stuff broke off of Omicron. And you can see when that was. Let's see, you look on the timeline and see when did it break off on the branch, and it appears to have been in April of 2021. I think. I'm not sure I'm reading that properly, but it's like a new, branch of the tree, and that it's new branch of the tree, but they still are calling it Omicron. It's like Omicron version B. Right, so it's not getting a full new rev.
Wow.
Not getting a whole new
Omicron, rev, right? 1.1.
Exactly. That's what it is. It's like an iteration. It's not new. So as I was saying, over the course of the last couple of weeks, the stories and the videos. So I published a video called Hunter versus Vlad, talking about this whole Russian disinformation angle, right? So it's a video I put together saying, well, wait a second, if what Jen Psaki is saying is true, let's watch this stuff and see if we can figure out who were the Russian influences, how did the Russians work their way in here? And we got to hear from John Paul MacIsaac and his uncle and his father and all these other guys, and we're trying to figure out, all right, which one's really, which one's the Ivan? Which one is the Russian spy? Is it the full bird colonel that was flying for the Air Force for 32 years? Is it the other colonel? So we're trying to figure all that out. So Jen
I do not
Psaki,
trust the Air Force at all, by the way.
Okay, well, there's a lot of people that work there, so that you just swept a lot of people into one corral.
Well, the good ones are not doing a good job of rooting out the bad ones, so therefore, I don't trust the whole thing.
It's again, it's like the FBI. We look at the Vegas shooting and the FBI. It's like, how do you trust the FBI after what happened there? It's very hard, Yeah. Even when you talk about, the rank and file. Well, the rank and file were out there with their mops and their rollers rolling over the, gunshots. So anyway, don't want to get off track. The net of it is, on this show, we've been talking about Hunter Biden's laptop. We've been talking about, and it's important to go to the next slide before they kill the show. The emails that we were talking about were confirmed by the New York Times. So that's when I published the video, right? So they validated all this stuff, and it kind of came back into the news cycle because the New York Times did a story and said, this is kind of true. This is kind of real. And a whole bunch of senators lost their minds recently and have started to say, well, wait a second. If all this stuff with this laptop was true and this was suppressed, might that have impacted the election?
There's so many stupid people in the Senate. It's really unbelievable.
Well, there's that, but people now are looking, with hindsight being 2020 and saying, well, wait a second, this was treated as disinformation. Right? Jen Psaki told us that this is Russian disinformation.
Doesn't even make sense.
Right. And then the New York Times comes out and says, no, this looks like it's legit. Right. So that's why we were talking about it and publishing it. Now, similarly, a couple of weeks ago, you and I started talking about biolabs in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And
Dan
then
Bongino is talking about that a lot now.
Now Dan Bongino is talking about it. We played some clips of Hunter Biden talking with Tulsi Gabbard about it. So this became kind of mainstream news. And now there's this new twist. And this just hit the newswire within the last 24 hours. You want to talk a little bit about this? I think you found this earlier. You sent this to me, right?
Oh, yeah, because I've been checking RT each morning, not to promote it or endorse it, but it's interesting to see what one side is claiming and if the other side addresses the claims. But this headline said that Russia has made Hunter Biden biolab claims a sprawling network of Ukrainian biological laboratories has received funding from U.S. government agencies and companies closely affiliated with top American elites. I hate that word. The Russian military claimed on Thursday. The fresh allegations were presented by Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, commander of the Russian Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Protection Forces, during a press briefing. And the general said that the available materials make it possible to trace the scheme of interaction between U.S. government agencies and Ukrainian biological objects, Kirillov said, presenting an elaborate scheme purported to show the flow of funding. He's talking about metabiota, and here's another quote. It says, pay attention to the involvement in the financing of such activities by structures close to the current U.S. leadership, in particular the investment fund Rosemont Seneca, which is headed by Hunter Biden. The fund has significant financial resources of at least $2.4 billion. Rosemont Seneca Fund is closely affiliated with top Pentagon contractors, and he explicitly named Metabiota as well as Black and Veatch.
And we're going to talk about Metabiota in our patron-only show. We have some slides about Metabiota and what it does, and we're going to take a closer look at that. So again, these stories that you and I have been talking about here on this show over the course of the last 3-4 weeks, it's like we do the show, and it is big news in the next week or so. So, but at the same time, what the heck happened to the pandemic? Where'd the pandemic go? Where's that?
Old
what
news.
Happened? Yeah. So again, for anybody who's watching and has missed the last couple shows, let's just rattle through a couple quick slides to just show them kind of what we showed the audience. We went to the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, and we showed our audience some documents that the U.S. Embassy was no longer publishing. And this was the day after the attack. So the day after Russia made their move, I guess it was the invasion. Yeah. So February 24th was that day, and we did our show on the 25th. So the next day, we were looking at these documents. Tucker Carlson comes out. Tucker says, fact check. And what was happening was what we had just talked about. They started by saying, no, this is all fake news. This is fake news. Mm-hmm. Right. And then the Victoria Nuland gets questioned in the Senate and goes, well, they're kind of legit. And so the point was that you and I did this thing where we went back in time, found the archives, and found the documents that certified, this was legit. This was Department of Defense, Black and Veatch, money going into the Ukraine. And, not a conspiracy, just documented activity of what was happening. And then we were watching the videos from 2 years ago saying, everything that we're doing here is, kind of new versions of Flintstone chewables. And it's for the good of mankind, right? We're just working on better vitamin C and, a better version of guacamole. Yeah. So that's been the story. But at the same time, you kind of wonder, well, hey, what happened to that pandemic we were dealing with? Is that still a thing, or is that like not a thing anymore? So I wanted to just share with the audience some math before we have to go to our patron-only show. And when we get to the patron-only show, what we're going to be looking at, where is the pandemic really kind of bad right now? Because it's kind of bad in some places. Like it's really bad.
And Russia.
China. More people have died in China in the last 4 weeks than any other time in the pandemic. So this past 4 weeks in China has been their absolute worst 4 weeks. And you're not hearing about that on the news. Now, I can tell you why, right? We'll talk about that later. Well, because what is the news going to say? China has twice as many people dead now.
Right. Yeah, no, they don't.
Twice as many people
talk
dead.
About it before. Why would they talk about it now?
Well, because they still don't have as many dead as Tennessee.
But the news doesn't care. The news did what it needed to do. Everybody's already lost their jobs.
Correct.
Taken the vaccine, and it's sort of like we don't need that anymore.
And we're on to the war, right? We're on to the war. And this is why it's important for us to say, no, we're gonna make sure, we have to check on this and make sure everything is buttoned up. So when we do some math, go back to that last one. This is a chart I put together just a couple of days ago, looking at in the United States, how many of the people that died in the United States are under 50 and how many of them are over 50? 7%
Blue is under 50.
Correct. So 7% of the people that died in the United States were under 50. So birth to 49 years old. 93% of the people that died from COVID were either 50 or older. All right. So
we've got Lloyd Braun, John, who's using a Seinfeld episode name, saying that all the data is suspect. So I'll just give the normal disclaimer that we're giving you this presentation because this is data that was presented to the public as the motivation for all of the public health policy. So when we're reviewing it, we're showing you that if all these decisions were made based on this information, here's the information.
And in fact, Lloyd, even so the best example of what you're saying, Lloyd, would be Bernie Madoff, because all the numbers were made up, all of them. And yet Harry Markopoulos still audited. Yeah. And it was via auditing it that he was able to illustrate that it was a house of cards. It was nonsense. Right. So you still have to audit it. And the Madoff story is the example that's the closest, where the whole thing was a house of cards. There was no legitimate transactions whatsoever. But Harry Markopoulos did the auditing for 9 years. And it's because he took pen to paper, because he did the same sort of thing that we do here, that you're able to see that it's nonsense. Yeah. Right. So that's why this guy's such a hero.
Don't you think they should definitely have Bob Odenkirk play Harry Markopoulos in a movie about him? They look like they could be brothers.
If we can get Bob Odenkirk a bad haircut, I think it's a ringer. I think it's a ringer. Yeah. We just have to get him that bad haircut and we're good to go. And a yellow shirt. All right, let's go one or two more slides.
We like Markopoulos.
I love him. The guy's a hero. All right, next slide. Next slide was people 65 and older, 65 and younger. So this is right at 74.26%. So 74% of the people that died in the United States were 65 and older, and 26% of the deaths were people younger than 65. US only. Okay. Now the next slide, this is where we're going in our patron only hour, but I want to give you guys kind of a peek. This is the World Health Organization's map. And the World Health Organization is telling us how many died. But now if you go to the next page, the World Health Organization is telling us that over 12,000 people have died in China. Now, 5-6 weeks ago, there weren't 5,000 people dead. So deaths in China have more than doubled. The problem is, for all the people who've been saying China's lying, well, what's going on now? They got more people dying in China than many other countries right now.
Why would they lie about that?
China, right, exactly. So maybe China wasn't lying. Maybe Anderson Cooper was lying. I don't know. I really don't know. But according to the World Health Organization, which is this map, and again, this is based on the same technology. This, the fundamental technology here, this map. Oh yeah, it's all the same stuff. So the ability to take the data and marry the data to the location, it's that we were doing back then. It's called geographic information systems. So this is the World Health Organization's version showing 12,261 dead. If you go to the next page, this is Johns Hopkins version, and they show 11,600 dead. So they're off by 600. Good question. So En Shengdong has got
Yeah.
his number. The World Health Organization has their number. And ironically, if you go to Worldometers,
We're
they'll
gonna have to
show
do
you. And
that
you, all
on
right,
the.
well, we're going to do that with patrons. But what you're going to see is Worldometers still showing less than 5,000. Why would that be?
Huh.
Why is
Yeah.
Worldometers showing misinformation? That's not a good thing.
Well, maybe not updated
gonna
frequently enough. Well, we're just about out of time here, John, but we are going to continue an in-depth conversation on subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, patreon.com/I am John Cullen, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. Join us over there. Even if you've never watched a sponsor-exclusive show before, if you just watch the free shows on YouTube and Rumble and Odyssey, don't forget you can still subscribe for free on rumble.com to either John. You can search for I am John Cullen on Rumble or Crowdsource the Truth. And don't miss Odyssey. Odyssey is a great way to catch Crowdsource the Truth. It's got one of the biggest libraries of the legacy shows, Social Engineers and Stupid Idiots, who are very similar to characters from 8-bit video games that feature a giant gorilla throwing barrels. They love to try to destroy this channel. So if people join us on Odyssey and Rumble, and certainly if you become a sponsor and join us on Subscribestar and Patreon, it's the best way to make sure that the show keeps going, whether you're watching here, there, or everywhere. Thanks for